Here we watch the fat dog in her natural habitat, sniffing, wandering aimlessly, picking up a tiny twig for no goddamn reason. If we look at the floor around here, we'll see plenty of twigs that she's picked up, chewed there for a bit, and then left for no reason.
As we all know, 20 years ago was the 1970s. Somehow, though, 1996 was 25 years ago. So, in my ongoing quest to ignore modern life and just look at the past in the vain hope that aimless nostalgia will wash away the filth of contemporary living, I decided to look at what happened in gaming in 1996. And, oh boy, 1996 was a hell of a year for gaming, and I would argue, using the rest of this video mainly, that it was actually the best year for gaming on all of the gaming record. My absolute favourite games and consoles came out in other years, but my favourite developers all formed in anything other than 1996. But overall, everything taken in as a whole, I think there is a genuine argument to be made that 1996, a quarter century ago this year, was gaming's best ever year.
Jill Sandwich.
Any year that saw something like Guardian Heroes would be up there with the best of the best. Treasure's multi-character brawler landed on Sega's Saturn in January, for Japan that is, setting the scene rather nicely for the year to come. Not just one of the Saturn's absolute best games, it thoroughly shat on all other scrolling beat-em-ups that had come before, reinventing the genre and bringing sheer, unadulterated joy to the 23 people who actually ended up owning it until its 2011 Xbox Live Arcade re-release. But that list of all-time greats didn't begin and end with Guardian Heroes. Tempted as I am to do a Yakko-style song list of them, instead I'll just talk about the other all-timers with regular, non-song-like words. Sorry. Another example of 1996's greatness came in the form of a sequel, actually a few sequels, but just this one right now, Command & Conquer Red Alert. The first game had made the real-time strategy genre mainstream, but it was this follow-up prequel that both improved the actual in-game mechanics significantly, making it less of an unbalanced tank rush 'em up. I said they made it less of one, not that it wasn't one. And at the same time, Westwood slathered Red Alert with a thick, delicious layer of silliness that ran strong through the rest of the series. Well, most of it, because Generals and those later free-to-play ones lost any semblance of tongue-in-cheek, but that's another complaint for another day. CNC Red Alert was, it's safe to say, a true great of the RTS genre. And it is much easier to say RTS genre than it is to say real-time strategy genre. Do you want another sequel? Sure, why not? Civilization 2. What more to say about that one? Not much. One of the best strategy games ever made, got a brilliant sequel, said sequel being something you can still play, enjoy, and genuinely have fun with to this day. 1986 saw Civ 2 come out and the formation of its developer for Axis Games, so that's a double whammy of greatness right there. People still play it, it's still great. Civilization 2 is an all-time classic. I will move on. This was also the year the first-person shooter came into its own, with games stepping away from the shackles of being called a Doom clone and instead being called Shooty Blast Time Bang Bang games, I think. My memory fails me. Regardless, two things happened in 1996 I absolutely will not ever forget. Quake came out, and Duke Nukem 3D came out. Now, I've written literally thousands of words about each of these games, sometimes both in the same article. What a wild guy I am. But there's no loss of love for either game, both were as important as the other. While we could have got by with just one of them, the FPS genre wouldn't have developed as swiftly and as well as it went on to without the two of them. It's the yin and yang of the genre and the turning point for an entire way of making games. Quake was the great technological hope. Coming from id Software, it would be the studio's first post-Doom release. A technological powerhouse of 3D graphics, atmospheric design, and TCP/IP-focused multiplayer coding that fundamentally changed the direction online gaming would head in. I mean, never mind the grenade launcher being awesome, the real-time lighting, or how ruddy brown it all was. Quake's move to the more reliable TCP/IP system and it being based on the Quake World framework turned online first-person shooters into what they are today. It was utterly revelatory. Duke Nukem 3D, meanwhile, was revelatory in that it was the first game I was refused sale of when I tried to buy it because it was 18 rated here in the UK and our rating system is legally enforceable. So what I did was, right, I went to another game shop, there used to be more than one back in the day, and bought Quake instead, because that was 15 rated and I could pass for 15 in 1996. But I digress. Duke Nukem 3D might not have brought it on the tech side of things with its already aged looking build engine doing some heavy lifting but paling in comparison to Quake, but it brought imagination and creativity in spades, and a sexist misogynist dickhead of a lead character who its own developers don't seem to understand these days, but I double digress. Fact is, 1996 gave us two of the absolute best and inarguably most important FPSs ever made, Duke hitting in January and Quake landing in June. id also published, just 5 days before Quake's release, Final Doom, which proved to both be the most easily ignorable entry in the series, as well as the one with the biggest lie in its title. Triple digression for the win. Back on the all-time wagon, an absolute monster, or should I say tyrant, or maybe even zombie. Wait, no, that doesn't actually make sense. A big series was about to start, that's what I meant. Resident Evil dragged its sorry carcass into view in March of '96, kickstarting the worst named genre in all of gaming, survival horror, and introducing the entire world to the absolute best character this side of Parappa the Rapper, Barry Burton. Oh God, my kingdom for a Parappa Burton crossover title. Capcom's game wasn't the first spooky mansion with monsters in the 3D realm. Alone in the Dark had been doing that for a while by then, and Ecstatica both existed and was something I was aware of. But Resi brought a mix of elements that just hadn't been put together like this before. It was a modern setting, well, the near future of 1998 actually. It involved full voice acting and wonderful FMV sequences. It had production values, actual money behind it, while at the same time being utterly, completely B-movie at its heart. It was new and different and exciting, and it absolutely deserved to do well. And it did. And yes, it's aged. The tank controls are a joke. The voice acting was laughed at even when it came out.
Jill Sandwich.
But there can be no denying how impactful Biohazard was when it first came out. I still know Jill's opening cutscene off by heart, given when I first got the game I didn't have a memory card. Chris is our old partner, you know.
Chris is our old partner, you know.
Okay. Let me handle this.
Okay, let me handle this.
Proceeds to stand still. Bliss. What else was there in 1996 that did big things, that changed gaming forever, that made a gargantuan impact we're still feeling the aftershocks of today, here in 2021, which it will forever remain in the context of this video? Nothing at all. There was nothing else. I have named the all-timers from 1996. I have indeed caught them all. Wahoo! Cutting through the subtle code speak there, you'll realise, kablam, it's Pokemon! The original red and green versions of the game launched in Japan on February 27, 1996, with the blue version coming in October 10 that year. Now, it wasn't until 1998 that any of these versions made their way to English-speaking countries, but the ball was set rolling by Game Freak and Nintendo a couple of years prior to that, in Japan, with the original releases of the game that I just mentioned. Pokemon was a behemoth. It's another one that's hard to overstate, and easy to just not really realise if you didn't experience it for yourself. It was everywhere, on everything. It completely took over. Admittedly, I based this in my 1998 and on filthy westerner experience of the game and the new culture it brought with it, but the fact is those first 3 Pokemon sold over 1 million copies in Japan in 1996 and went on to outsell Final Fantasy VII in 1997. It was, as cool kids like me say, hot shit. It birthed countless sequels, an anime series and plenty of films, a few manga series, endless bloody merchandise, and the ever-popular, ever-valuable trading card game. It was the Fortnite of its day, except, you know, good. But Pokemans wasn't the best thing about 1996. See, that year, in Japan and the US at least, people finally got their hands on Nintendo's most ultra of consoles, the N64. Sorry, should that be N64? With the console's launch, and in the months that followed, we saw titles raise the bar for contemporary gaming, like Wave Race 64, Pilot Wings 64, Mario Kart 64 in Japan, and, Mortal Kombat Trilogy? No, not that. But the others, yeah, they were damn good games. But on launch day, day one, the N64's must-have game was one that changed everything, that raised the bar, that actually took the bar and threw it over the moon. Super Mario 64. 3D platformers had been doing the deed for a few years by this point. Sure, it certainly wasn't the first of its type, but Mario 64 was the first to absolutely nail it, in a way that still, to this day, hasn't been bettered. It must have been an absolute nightmare to design everything and get it up to the exacting standards of Tyrant King Shigeru Miyamoto, especially with the pressure of an entire new console resting merrily on the game's back. But the end result is a love letter to what I'd assume was overwork, crunch, sleeping on the floor at the office, and being shouted at for things just not being cute enough. Look, this is my hilarious satirical way of saying Miyamoto isn't as nice as he looks, and Super Mario 64 was, and is, the best 3D platformer ever made. Well done, 1996. But there's more.
Jibble sandwich.
Just focusing on the old-timers does a disservice to the other things that happened in 1996, so let's touch on those here too. There were plenty of bloody good games released. Titles like Metal Slug, Knights, and Wipeout 2097 were and are brilliant fun, and in any other year would be easily among the contenders for the best of the best. But, like, Mario 64 came out in 96? Sorry, Crash Bandicoot. Then there were a fair few games that hit with an influential power you don't see with every game. Tekken 2's PS1 port, for example, redefined what it meant to be arcade perfect, with the home version easily outdoing the coin-up original. Maybe not graphically, but in every other way. All of a sudden it didn't feel like you were missing out by staying home and playing games like these. And while that one game wasn't responsible for the death of the arcades, at least in the mainstream sense, it did have a huge hand in shifting the tide towards the living room. Or sordid grief hole, I don't know where you play your games. The Elder Scrolls, meanwhile, continued its path to, well, anywhere with Daggerfall, given how big the map was. It wasn't quite the breakthrough to the masses that Morrowind ended up being, nor was it the ever re-released world beater that Skyrim ended up being, but the second mainline Elder Scrolls game did give us an enticing look at the future of video games. That being an endless slog through mostly empty countryside. Huzzah! 3D platformers might have been instantly perfected with Mario 64, yes, I'm mentioning that again, but it's not like there was nothing else in the world of the platformer with an extra dimension. Tomb Raider, for example, helped usher in a new era of gritty adventures with a focus on players who weren't wee babies into that Mario star collecting toss. I'm just playing to the crowd here, Mario's ace. But yeah, aside from Lara Croft being a cultural phenomenon that's genuinely embarrassing to look back on these days, Core's first jab at Indiana Jones and Hot Pants put mainstream gaming on a direct path towards the Uncharted's and The Last of Us as we see today, just with a bit more wanton animal murder. Rounding off 1996's sphere of influence was Meridian 59, a game I hadn't even heard about until I started researching this topic being an entire year, so yes, I've probably missed some things, get over it. Meridian 59 was actually the world's first 3D MMORPG, showing us all that the endless job-like drudgery of your average online RPG could indeed be stretched into a whole other dimension without losing the ability to spend way too much time in it doing pointless busy work. I don't like MMOs. Still, influence.
Jibble sandwich.
Of course, personal feelings do have to come into things, unfortunate as that might be. And 1996 proved a solid one for a 13-year-old Ian. While I should have been out learning to talk to girls and getting better at football and having my first furtive experiences with drugs and alcohol like all the cool kids were, I was instead playing Twisted Metal 2. A hell of a lot. There is no part of me that honestly believes it belongs in the influential pile, in the best of pile, even in the great games of 1996 pile. Twisted Metal 2 was always a bit shoddy around the edges, and it's always felt a bit grimy to really honestly like it. So I guess that makes me grimy. Oh well, I liked it and I still do. Shh. Die Hard Trilogy showed me licensed tie-ins don't always have to be garbage, though it did also make me think John McClane actually said, "Ho ho ho, I have a machine gun," which he absolutely does not, and I hate you, Probe, for ruining my brain like that. Blood Omen Legacy of Kain managed to show me that I actually like Zelda-style games without me actually knowing it was a Zelda-style game, and to this day I will maintain I don't really like Zelda-style games, even though I loved this Zelda-style game. The best for me on a personal level in 1996 though was Destruction Derby 2. The first game was fun for a bit, but ultimately dull. The sequel was 100% a step up into the future of gaming for me. Why? This bit. You might have been able to do something like this on games before DD2, I honestly have no idea. But to me, to Ian age 13, this was the absolute future of games. The physics, the destruction model, the speed, the mucking about. I never actually played all the way through Destruction Derby 2 because I was so very drawn to this bit of the second track. Doing this over and over again. Yeah, no, I was not one of the cool kids. Back at Nintendo, the company wasn't 100% focused on the N64, nor did it care about how crap a teenager I was being, because it had something else to see out: the lifetime of the SNES. Admittedly, the 16-bit console wasn't actually discontinued until 2003, which is absolutely staggering to consider. The SNES was officially around until the GameCube came out, but by 1996 it was very much not a main consideration for anyone in and around gaming. All the same, 1996 saw some whoppers release in the console's mainstream twilight. Terranigma saw an English-language version, and German, French and Spanish, following its original Japan-only launch in 1995. Oddly, this RPG never made it to US shores, and as a result it's become one of the most valuable titles in the SNES's back catalogue, frequently selling for hundreds of pounds on eBay and the like. This is especially strange considering, while good and beautiful, the game isn't that great. It's good, and definitely something you should play if you want to experience all the RPGs, but it's not quite Legend territory. Legendary owing to its lack of US release maybe, but not for how good a game it was. Super Mario RPG, on the other hand, switched things up by releasing in the US but not Europe, and by being an absolute blinder of a game when, really, looking at the Mario series prior to its release, there's no reason why it should have been any good at all. Why the hell did they make a Mario-themed RPG? No idea, but they did, and it was magnificent, even if I couldn't get my hands on it for about a decade. It was great looking for the SNES, offered real depth in its play, and directly led to the likes of Paper Mario and the Mario & Luigi RPG spin-offs. Kirby Superstar was another 1996 SNES release that shouldn't have been any good but was actually superb. Mini-games? Psh, rubbish, pointless, waste of time. Except it was great and fun and just a thorough joy from start to finish. But for me, the real thing for the SNES in 1996 was Street Fighter Alpha 2. Why on earth did this come out? I have got no idea. The last Street Fighter released on a SNES before it was Super Street Fighter 2 in 1994. The original Alpha hadn't come to the 16-bitter. This was a decision made by some wild card at Capcom who decided to give the console a send-off. A big thank you from the company for all the good times it had shared over the past half-decade. It might have needed the SDD1 chip to aid with sprite compression and decompression, so some might argue it was cheating, but the fact is this was a modern arcade game that absolutely should not have been possible to port in any reasonable fashion to the SNES, not without significantly chopping it down. Instead, we ended up with something of a porting masterclass. It was cut back, sure, it had animation missing and compressed sound and a few other nuggets that made it far less than perfect, but the fundamentals were there, and Street Fighter Alpha 2 performed far better on the aging hardware than anyone would have expected it to. I'd say it was an impossible port, but that'd be encroaching on another video series I've done.
Jibble sandwich.
What else made 1996 a year worth blabbing on about for this long? Outside of the N64, we did see a couple of notable bits of hardware. Pocket Pets in the form of Tamagotchi saw their Japanese release, and would go on to take over the world like a slightly less fervorous Pokemon. I never had one, but a friend and I did look after another friend's Tamagotchi overnight once, which just turned into an experiment to see how quickly we could kill it. I promise I didn't grow up to be a psychopath. Sega, meanwhile, released the Model 3 hardware into arcades, putting the likes of Sega Rally 2, Star Wars Trilogy and Virtua Fighter 3 in front of many a coin-toting player. Sure, the arcade was heading in the direction of not being relevant, but at that point in time there was nothing quite as powerful, impactful and impressive as Sega's hardware. You just didn't get the same full-on wow factor at home, even though Tekken 2 et al. Was pushing things in that direction. Other stuff? I've mentioned Firaxis began life in 1996, but so did Black Isle Studios, the small collection of gorgeous nerds who started the best RPG series ever in the shape of Fallout. Another gorgeous group of glorious nerds, gone, I guess, banded together to form a little company known as Valve, which would go on to, well, change everything forever. But that's definitely another story for another time. GameSpot started too, which is neat. I mean, there's a subsection of the few of you that've got this far into the video who are probably screaming bloody murder at the screen because ethics or whatever, but A, stop that, B, go away, and C, nobody cares, you're full of shit. GameSpot isn't my favourite site, I rarely go anywhere near it, but it grew into a big part of what modern gaming is, and that should not be overlooked. 1996 was a hell of a year for gaming. And that's my argument. In full, Your Honour. It might not have resembled an argument for most of it, instead just being a loosely strung together list of things that happened at a point in time, but it is, as ever, my video, and so I make my own damn laws. The law of Bransfield is supreme. Bye!
Yeah.